Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Wheeler and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. Now the topic for today, believe it or not, is clever uses of string in your Dungeons and Dragons game. Wow, gosh, is there actually something you can do with string? Well, as it happens, there are a couple of things you can do with string. So what can you do with a ball of string in your Dungeons and Dragons game? I have 20 possibilities here. Some are quite serious and others are a bit more jestful, but I have 20 options for you to select throughout your game. Believe it or not, it took me a week, maybe two, possibly 3 weeks to figure it all out, but I got there eventually. Okay, number one is you can lay out a trail of string as you're wandering through that maze to find your way back out. So if you go into the maze and you need to get back out of the maze, then you can just lay down that ball of string and tie it off somewhere, otherwise you won't be able to get back out. Now the only problem is, if your ball of string is very short, it's not going to work, and you might be better off selecting a different method for getting out of a maze, because there is a better way of doing that rather than a ball of string. But there's always a way. You can always tie off on sections of the maze so you can see where you have been before. Okay, number two is you can use your ball of string plus a few other handy dandy items, probably some glass bottles or something that will make a clattering or jingling noise. You can set up an alarm system around your campsite with trip lines, that's what the string's for, and to hang those bottles or bits of pots and pans and whatever, so that when somebody trips over the line, they activate the jingly jangly chimes and you can hear them coming. So basically an alarm system around your camp. I've talked about some of these before with other items within your Dungeons and Dragons pack. I am just continuing the line on that. You can also use your ball of string, particularly if you have different colours, to tie off these different coloured pieces of string, or just a simple piece of string, onto a branch to avoid getting lost in a forest or a swamp or a wilderness. This sort of lets you know where you have been before, and you can always sort of look back. If you lay them out close enough together, you can see where you came from, so that if you do sort of find yourself in a tricky spot, you can backtrack to where you started off in the first place. Of course, with string, you can use that string for a trigger line, for a trap or a snare. If you're the sort of person who likes to watch people trip over things and then find themselves upside down or hit by other items that sort of hurt quite a lot, then that's another option for you. Number 5 would be you can tie your money pouch or purse to your belt, or inside your pocket would be probably a better idea, so that the thieves that are running around trying to steal your stuff find it much harder to actually steal your pocket money, you might say, your purse. If you are a wizard, a magic user who uses a wand, then you can tie a string to your wand and then tie the other end of the string to your wrist, so that it's harder for you to be disarmed. That means you can't lose your wand or drop it on the ground, or if you have to let go of the wand, it's just going to be dangling around your arm so you can actually get hold of it fairly quickly without having to worry about sort of backtracking to where you dropped it on the ground if you run away, or if you decide to sort of find yourself in a position where you can't hold on to something because somebody's done sort of, a strange job on you with some sort of magic powers. Okay, number 7 is, now I've used this before with another video that I did, which is around sealing wax. You can use string and sealing wax to set up on a door or a window a makeshift intruder indication seal. So if the string and the seal is broken, then you can tell that somebody has gone through that door. Now, of course, somebody might be smart enough to put the seal back, but you can usually see when somebody has broken a seal and had to repatch it. So that might not work quite so well for them if they're trying to hide their trail as they pursue you. If you're the sort of person who likes to go fishing, then you can make a simple fishing rod with a branch or a stick, a hook, and some string. Tie that together and go fishing, catch yourself some food. I wouldn't suggest anything particularly large because it is string after all. It might not be able to survive that. Number 9 is create a small bow from a bent piece of wood and a piece of string, and you're going to put this in combination with a couple of pieces of wood, and you're going to make it up a bow for actually starting a fire. It's probably not quite as good as using something like flint and steel, but if you decided not to take that with you, you still have an option for creating a fire if you don't have matches or another way of creating flame for your fire camp or campfire. Okay, number 10. Right, you're going through a dungeon or a cave or something like that. You can tie off onto your string a weight, some sort of heavy weight, and when you come to a deep pool or a shallow pool or a body of water, you can check the depth of that water by lowering the weight into the water, and then of course when you pull it up you'll be able to see how deep it is, because it'll be indicated by the length of string that is wet rather than the length of string that is dry. So you are going to use it for depth sounding, essentially. Okay, number 11 is for tying things together. So you can tie two wooden poles together to make a longer pole if a 10-foot pole is not going to do it, or you can use a lot of string and a lot of poles and make yourself a fence. This will keep out the rabbits and other rodents, things like that, provided they are very, very large rather than small. Maybe it's just a makeshift fence just to keep things sort of contained. But I'm going for the longer pole because often the 10-foot pole's just not quite long enough, and a little bit more extension would be helpful. You can also use a ball of string, quite a large ball of string I would imagine, to distract a large wild cat with that ball of string so that it doesn't eat you, or should I say eat your character. We're not really worried about the players because they're not going to actually have to worry about dangerous animals or monsters. Okay, number 13 is packaging. So you want to tie that wrapping around your package or gift for an important non-player character or character within the story. Well, you're going to need some string, unless of course you actually have sellotape and duct tape in your game, and so therefore string is not really needed and you just use the sellotape. But if you don't have that sort of thing, string is the way to go. You can tie a small weight to a piece of string, just as before with the depth sound, and toss that down. Now the heavy end, not the entire ball of string, hang on to the ball of string and toss the heavy end down a passage to a dungeon to activate floor traps by dragging it towards you, so that you don't need to worry about running away from big boulders and dodging darts and so forth. The great thing about this particular use is I did a video around rope, and the thing is string is a lot lighter than rope. So rather than having rope and doing this with a larger weight, you can use a smaller weight and a piece of string. Certainly really useful if you're dealing with a pressure plate which is only activated by light pressure rather than by heavy pressure. Okay, number 15. We're going to go fishing again. You can tie a metal spike to a pole with your piece of string and make a fishing spear and go fishing. Easy enough, unless of course you don't need a fishing spear and you can catch fish with your hands, then I wouldn't worry about it, but still an option. I know what you're thinking with this one. You can make a DIY phone. Okay, so a couple of cans, a piece of string, you know the story. You talk through one end and the sound travels down the string to the other can and you can hear them. Of course, not really useful unless you have a really long piece of string, so make sure you have a long piece of string, or just go get yourself the spell sending or a sending stone, or just shout really loudly if it doesn't matter if everybody else hears what's being communicated. So DIY phone. Let's tie somebody up, shall we? We can use a ball of string for tying up small enemies and monsters. We would use rope for larger monsters and enemies, but we can use a ball of string for tying up little critters like goblins and gremlins and fairies and so forth, the little itty bitty ones. Or is it the other way round? Do the smaller creatures tie you up with the ball of string and you provide them with the string so they don't have to bring their own. Okay, so that's I just thought it was amusing. I was thinking of Gulliver's Travels at the time, and I thought, yeah, let's do that. You can take a piece of string and soak it in oil and use it as a very quick fuse that will travel to an explosive, blowing something up. Or you can not soak it in oil and the fuse will burn a lot slower, therefore you will have time to run away without blowing yourself up, which is always nice too. What about using that string and a whole bunch of pieces of sticks, rods, it could be anything that's sort of sound, and you can make yourself a splint for a broken limb. I would imagine that a broken leg, not quite so useful, but a broken wrist, maybe an arm, certainly a finger. Let's go with the string. Is anybody really going to get a piece of wood or a stake or something like that, tie it around their finger with a piece of rope? No. You want a piece of string because it's smaller. It makes perfect sense to me. I believe it is. Anyway, last one, number 20, is you can use a piece of string, provided it's strong enough and isn't going to break under the tension, although what you can do is just wet that string down and it will probably have a lot more strength to it, and create a strangle or garrote line so that you can take out those enemies from behind and they won't be able to see you coming. Yeah. Now, if you found this video helpful and informative, fantastic. I actually have many videos on how to use different pieces of adventuring gear in your Dungeons & Dragons game. Some are got a little bit jestful, some of them have got some pretty good ideas in there. It's really up to your imagination. Just because it's not a power on your character sheet does not mean it doesn't have lots of different uses to you in your game. Now, if you're not into adventuring gear and you want more advice around being a player or a dungeon master in Dungeons & Dragons 5e or just Dungeons & Dragons, I have hundreds of videos for players and dungeon masters. You're welcome to go and check those out. Make sure to check out my Patreon page. I have affiliate links to the book depository and Amazon. I have a merchandise shelf underneath all of my videos. That's if you want to support the channel. Otherwise, just keep watching my videos. That's fine too. Make sure to share, like, and subscribe. Hit the bell button to be notified when I go live and when I publish new videos. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.